And so we have to have a national conversation, a real one this time, bipartisan, cross-sector, about what environment we're creating for our young people, what investments we're going to do for the next generation. Be embracive of all post-secondary success opportunities. There are a lot of ways to get what you want. Close that trust gap, and they'll start to believe again. Like, this American dream thing is what? Yeah, it's working out for me.
Welcome to the Opportunities Accelerators, the show where professionals at any stage can learn how to level up their career from those that have found success and have the scars to prove it. Our goal for this show is to provide business mentorship and maybe some inspiration in a podcast, but we also touch on other topics in the tech industry, in particular, how we can close the tech skills gap in the United States by creating more and better pathways to advanced tech careers. Opportunity Accelerators is brought to you by SkillStorm, the pioneers of and leaders in Tech Force by Design. SkillStorm custom designs, builds, and deploys cohesive US-based tech teams at scale for our enterprise and government clients, who are some of the largest and most prestigious firms in the world. And I am Vince Verga, along with my friends, co-hosts, and business partners, the man who puts the awesome in Aussie, Justin Vianello.
Thank you, Vince. Thank you.
And the man who puts the end in legend, the legend from Liverpool, Joe Mitchell. What's going on, gentlemen?
How's it going?
Good.
Justin, I noticed you had a different sweater on earlier, or was that the other day that I saw that video?
It was the other day. This has been on all day.
I didn't know if you kept a wardrobe change in your office for special occasion.
But Joe does. I can tell you, it's a little scary in his office when he's getting ready for this podcast.
Does he have a staff?
I had this on yesterday thinking we had a podcast yesterday, and it was today, so I had to put it back.
It's been wearing
it for 48 hours. Are you suggesting to the audience that you wore that shirt 2 days in a row?
You should have just said, Joe, you should have said you got two. You blew it, buddy.
It's a box of them.
Oh, yes, we have a guest today. So why don't we introduce our guest? Justin, take it away.
All right. Welcome, Cordell Carter. Cordell, welcome to the podcast. In terms of Cordell's background, Cordell is described as a belonging evangelist. He has spent much of his 20-year career advocating for belonging for all those looking for an opportunity to thrive. He is currently the executive director of the Aspen Institute Socrates Program and is the founding director of the Aspen Institute Project for Belonging. Cordell is the founder of the Festival of Diaspora, connecting diasporic communities across the Americas. Previously, Cordell held leadership roles with other notable organizations, including the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and IBM, as well as several public and private educational institutions. We are very proud to say that Cordell is a member of the SkillStorm Advisory Board and is chairman of our UpSkill Together program, which we'll find out more about later. His experience in leadership has been invaluable in helping us pursue our purpose of accelerating opportunity for thousands of first-generation graduates and military veterans. It is my great pleasure, great pleasure to welcome Cordell. Welcome, Cordell.
Thank you all. Thank you. It's an honor to be here all the time.
I was going to say, fresh off the plane from Brazil.
Yes, fresh off the plane.
Welcome back.
It's good to be back.
Yes. So Cordell, at the beginning of every show, we like to do a little icebreaker just to get us loosened up a little bit. So today's icebreaker is going to be, I'm going to sing a song and you're going to tell us what that brings to mind. Are you ready for this?
Yeah.
Here, I got a good one for our first one. You ready? At the Copacabana. What does that bring to mind?
It brings back 2 days ago at the Copacabana where I almost passed out. No, it was beautiful. It was challenging, but it was worth it.
And that was your festival, right?
Festival, yeah. We had 200 plus people there. So it was a record-breaking year for us. We had, federal leaders, state leaders. We had media. It was like we're growing up. We're a real organization now. And this came out of just an idea. And so it just brought to mind the power of ideas and hard work. They go hand in hand. Yes.
Yeah, since we're on the topic, why don't you kind of give a little overview of what the festival is all about and kind of what inspired you to start it?
Sure. So I think you all know that my dad is a minister. And as I like to joke with him when he says, you're the only man in the family that doesn't want to be a minister, I said, well, I like brown liquor and women a little too much, Dad. He says, so do we. But I said, no, seriously, I've never seen my call as a religious call. It's always been secular. Like, how do we help people? The folks I admire from the Bible stories they told us as kids were never the prophets. It was always Joseph, because without Joseph, Israel starves. So does Egypt. But someone has to be thinking and zooming out of the superstition and get us to, like, how do we get people to the next place? And so that's always been something of interest to me. And so when I was trying to figure out how do I help my country, frankly, come together, we were some really challenging times during COVID. I said, what worked for us when we were kids? We had these big old tent revivals, and they were a lot of fun. To us, it's like we would say the aliens are coming, because this is when people from the farms would come. And these are people you wouldn't see. We were city folk, so we wouldn't see them often, only at family reunions or funerals. And just the way they worship was different, strange to us, but comforting in many ways. And I wanted to evoke that same spirit, but in a secular sense, and then do it also outside of the USA, because things are a little looser south of us. And so we said, okay, we're going to build a secular tent revival, a celebration of ideas, music, culture, history, all of that good stuff. Just bring people together. And because in the Americas, you have really two choices. You're here by force or choice. Either way, we're here. And we're our ancestors' greatest dreams, all of us. Okay. And so I wanted people to embrace this positive narrative, share what they do, have fun, connect with people they never would connect with, just be this motley crew making our way across the continent, getting to know each other a little better. And to see this now, we're 4 years into the process, just finished our third big convening, and to see this thing come together and just take a life of its own has been so incredibly gratifying to me. I had many moments last week where I'm just kind of sitting back, just watching magic happen. And it was very moving for me personally, and motivating. I say, hey, the next step is to connect them with the skills piece, the training piece, because I think there's a lot of talent. These great leaders we're meeting across the continent. If we can get them to be job ready, meaning actually learn English, in addition to the technical skill they're already bringing to the table, I think we can solve part of our issues in the United States with our tech shortage.
Oh, that's great. And I had the opportunity to attend the festival a couple of years ago in Puerto Rico. Was that the first one?
That was the first one.
Yeah.
You should see us now. They surprised me. They had the Carnival Royal Court from this year. So the Queen, the two princesses, and the two dukes, they met me in the green room at this palace where we were doing the closing party. And I didn't know who they were, obviously. And they said, we're your surprise. And I'm like, oh my. And I'm like speechless. And it's like, no, this is the royal court from the carnival. You're going to march them out and they're going to dance for us. And
oh, wow.
I couldn't believe it. So I'm dancing with the Carnival Queen. I tell you, it was amazing. Wait till you see the footage from that. It was amazing. It really was.
Well, it doesn't get any bigger than Carnival in
Absolutely.
Brazil. You actually preempted the next song I was going to sing. It was "Son of a Preacher Man," so I'll spare you that. But one last song, and then we can get going. So, does this ring a bell, Cordell? My girl, my girl.
Temptations. I used to sing that with my daughter. This is before, how the toddlers will pretty much do anything. They're not shy. She used to do the whole dance performance and everything, the spin, the blow, and the kiss. And we would do performances before she started getting a little shy when she was like 6 or 7. But so that was our song, "My Girl."
And you sang it for us at our company conference. It was a stirring rendition.
Yes, you did. Remember the talent show? We'll have to pull out that footage.
That's right. But that was my daughter's and I's song. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I sing that as well, Cordell, to my daughter, but now she just walks away.
She doesn't want anything to do.
You gotta get a microphone.
Yeah. Wow.
So Cordell, while we're on the topic of music, so you're a trained opera singer. So
I was, yes.
Why did you choose not to pursue a career in music?
Number one, it's a lot of hard work, and I was so immature at that point where I was training that I just knew I couldn't put the effort into it. And what did it for me, I had to make a choice one semester. It was probably spring of '96, whether I was going to do student government or continue with the university production of, I believe it was Carmen. And so it was going to take a lot of time. And I just remember sitting outside of the observatory and I can hear them singing. And I'm looking at people play hacky sack, because that's how old I am, hacky sack on the lawn. And I'm like, and I'm looking up and I'm looking around. I'm looking up and I'm looking around. And I was like, I want to be outside. And so I gave up the music scholarship there, but promised myself that I would keep at it. A promise I haven't kept completely. But I don't regret the training. I loved it. I mean, it's something I grew up doing. And in fact, I sang for the festival this year,
Oh,
the
wow.
other night. Something I don't do a lot anymore. But I try not to live with regrets. And I say it's just part of the experience that makes me an interesting person.
So your father's a pastor, you mentioned, and you
Yeah.
spent a lot of time in the church. Is that where you found or refined your musical abilities?
Oh, yeah. I mean, when your dad's the pastor, you are part of the show. And I remember, I think the first time they put me on top of you know what a Hammond organ is? It's a stand-up. It's made to mimic the sound of a pipe organ because it spins like that. But it's actually a stand-up, like almost like a stand-up piano. And a lot of Black churches have it because they're small. And so they would put me on top of it because otherwise you wouldn't be able to see me. And I would lead the choir as a 4-year-old singing songs. And they would uh, put me up all the time for what we call a sermonic solo. And I just got used to being in front of adults, still not embarrassed. I can do it in my sleep. And that was very normal for my sisters and I. And that's where it started. And it wasn't until high school when I moved to Washington State from Southern Virginia that I had to do a music requirement. I said, oh, okay, that's interesting. I'll do choir. I figured something easy. And it was the first time I actually had to read music and everything because, we just like play my key, let's go. That's how it works in a Black church. And here, and I'm with a bunch of Mormons, and these kids could sight read. And so I had to learn quickly. The talent alone wasn't enough. You actually had to have some skill too. And so it was a very, very good experience. I got exposed to sacred music. To this day, I still listen to St. Olaf Choir. We were an 80-person a cappella choir and was very competitive
Wow.
in Washington State at the time. And some of this music just still moves me to this day. And I listen to it still. St. Olaf Choir out of Minnesota, one of the oldest college choirs we have in the U.S. And just amazing music that goes back, since the 1870s. Just all of these Swedes and Nordics getting together, singing in the snow. That's influenced American popular music.
So
That's awesome.
you went from high school and then fast forward several years. You have a law degree from the University of Notre Dame. What interested you in law, and why didn't you pursue a career in law?
Yeah, so I was a talkative kid, if you haven't noticed, and they say you're probably going to end up a lawyer because that's lawyers just talk all the time for a living. I said, oh, it's interesting. So I was intrigued by it, and they started having me hang out with our church lawyer, and I would just sit in his office and look at his books. And I'm a little kid, so they would do meetings right in front of me. It didn't matter, and I was always fascinated by law as an idea, as a profession. And when I got to university, it was pretty clear to me I didn't have the temperament for a legal practice, but I still wanted the education because I thought it was a good leadership degree. And so when I came to choosing law schools in the year 2004, I went with for me, a non-traditional choice because I really fell for the marketing. Notre Dame said, we educate a different type of lawyer. And I was like, oh, I think I'm different. And they're more civically engaged. They were like, they love when you become a prosecutor. They love judges. I mean, they really focus on the profession and as an institution. And I love that approach. And I had a really good intellectual experience there. And then I had an opportunity to practice do environmental law for 1 year, fresh out of law school in Germany, as a Bosch fellow. And I took the bar while I was in law school. and it was kind of a practice, and I passed. I was like, okay, done. I will never take up another bar again. I've held that promise. I wasn't supposed to pass, but I took it. And in fact, my dean was really upset with me. She's like, you're going to mess up our 100% bar passage rate. And I said, well, my pregnant wife just demanded that I do it just in case I pass so we can summer in France with the baby. So what would you like me to do, madam? And so I took it, passed, we summered in France, continued on to Germany, came back to the US to work for Seattle Public Schools, and spent 3 years in their business and their law department working on labor issues, mostly labor contracts, negotiating them. I was a young pup, and so I did not know what I was walking into. And I was trying to figure out why all these very seasoned people were gladly giving me these assignments. No one wants to do this stuff, okay? But I'm glad I did. It was a great experience that I hope to never experience again. It was fantastic in the past.
So, Cordell, obviously, I know your family are big believers in education. We've had a lot of conversations about it. I think your daughter is about to go off to college. Yeah.
Yes.
But a lot's changed, since we were in school, and I know you've worked on some of these, challenges with, the Gates Foundation and obviously the Aspen Institute. What is your assessment of where we are today with higher education? And, how do you, I mean, if the point of college education is to prepare people for jobs, right. And doing it in a way that doesn't crush them financially, we're not necessarily doing a great job. So big picture wise, what are some things that you see that we need to change? And what are some things that we can focus on that can do a better job of, getting these people prepared for success in the real world?
Yeah, so I'll start at the highest level first, and that's just industrial policy. We don't really have one. We have a lot of strategies, but they're not tethered to anything. And so I think one of the reasons that we're so confused and there's an over-reliance, or I should say an over-dependence on traditional higher ed, is that that's what we've always done, and that is work for the people that are in power. They can't conceptualize an alternate path because that's not the path that they chose. And no one thinks they're dumb. I've learned this, especially leaders. No one thinks they're dumb. No one thinks they're inadequate. And so if you parrot back their experience, parrot back their words, they're going to assume that you're brilliant. Okay. And so from an industrial policy standpoint, we don't really have one. Okay. So you chunk that down. What happened over the last, from I would say the 80s until about the 90s, we essentially eradicated career and technical education. We've rendered it for kids that had behavioral problems or intellectual.
So like what some people refer to as vocational schools.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. CTE. And so you gut out what was some really good pathways for folks that wanted jobs faster. And so really, if you want CTE now, your only option, well, your primary option is the military. Okay, which is not ideal because they have a very different purpose.
Right.
And so, but that's as a great developer of skills right now, technical skills for folks. And so we've limited options when we should have been going the opposite direction. And now people are like, okay, well, I went and got this really expensive degree. I have a degree in underwater basket weaving and I can't get a job. There's something wrong with America. No, there's something wrong with you and the choices you made. And so what I counsel people now is like, be embracive of all post-secondary success opportunities. There are a lot of ways to get what you want. Let's be real clear. What is it that you want to do? What type of things do you want to prepare yourself to do? If you can figure that out, I think there's a way you can do it without incurring $120,000 in loans. And so I want to address the cost of higher ed for a second, because I'm blaming the boomers on this one. So when my parents, neither of my parents went to school, university like I did, but had they gone and paid state tuition, it would have been in the, $50, $60 a quarter or semester type of thing. It was heavily subsidized by my grandparents. Okay. Now something happened as my parents got older. Their generation didn't want to pay for it anymore. And so whereas the cost of physical plant for universities just kept increasing, and the cost of tenure, just like lifetime employment, keeps increasing. And then the competitive issues, like, hey, I want to make sure that I'm as expensive as my peers so people won't think less of me. So those competitive issues, think US News and World Reports, all these pressures are pushing the price up. And people are assuming I'm getting more value based on what I'm paying. And that's just not true, right? Meanwhile, the subsidy from society has gone away. And we have these young people going off to university, doing what their parents did, and incurring incredible, like life-defining amounts of debt.
Yeah.
I remember being on the loan forgiveness committee at the University of Notre Dame and encountering fellow students that already had $200,000 in debt from undergrad before law school. And I'm like, why are you here? Like, who told you to do this again? Okay. And so you can imagine how it impacts your life. But I'm like, we're the first generation now that we're not going to do as well as our parents because of this debt. There's over $1 trillion of debt just for higher education. This is clearly unsustainable. And so our options are real simple. Working directly with employers, let's decompose what is it you need for these roles, because you don't need a 4-year engineering degree to code. You don't need a 4-year engineering to do so. You need someone with that specific skill. All right, let's build that specific skill. Let's do that. Let's get people that fast. You tell me exactly what readiness looks like to you. And we'll meet somewhere in the middle, and then we're going to try it out. That's the education now. That's the path. Had my daughter not been interested in scientific research, there's no way on God's green and blue earth I would send her a 4-year institution.
Yeah.
There's just no reason for it. Not with what we know now. And so we have to have a national conversation, a real one this time, bipartisan, cross-sector, about what environment we're creating for our young people, what investments we're going to do for the next generation. Because this beautiful thing that happened with demographics in this country is that we have far more people than we anticipated. Most developing countries are decreasing the amount of the population. That's just what happens with certain wealth attainment. The the Gen Xers, my generation, had far more children than anticipated. Normally, you would have 1.5. We had 2.5, 2.2 to be exact. And so there's a lot more people here. So we have much more labor, which is great. But then you have this absurd amount of debt and grave concerns about the future of higher ed. I mean, COVID really exposed a lot. Like, what are you paying for exactly? If I'm sitting in my living room, why am I still paying $33,000 a semester?
Well,
What is it? Why am I doing that? You know? And frankly, higher ed didn't have a good answer other than that's how much it costs. And so I don't think they're a movable force because they're so powerful. Remember, the people in power went to these institutions. They're going to support these institutions. I'm merely calling for a national dialogue on embracing all post-secondary success opportunities, because that is what our economy needs. If we're going to maintain our edge globally as a hegemon, we need butts and seats. Okay, you can't import your way out of this one. You got to love the ones that you're with. And the ones that we're with, the people here, they need other options. And frankly, these options have to be funded and supported the same way that we fund traditional higher ed.
I couldn't agree more. Look, what is it, $400 billion a year spent on education and only $400 million spent on apprenticeships.
Yeah.
And most of those apprenticeships are not technology-related apprenticeships. The traditional trade apprenticeship. So today it's very different. And then if you look at the education system, Cordell, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this too. The education system hasn't really changed in 100 years.
Yeah.
Many of the courses that we offer today are over 100 years old, right? And the curriculum hasn't changed, but the outcomes have changed considerably. They've changed enormously, right? So
exactly,
with the data that we have and everyone talking about outcomes-based education, why the heck do we still offer dozens and dozens of courses that have absolutely terrible job outcomes for college graduates, but are racking up these hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of debt? So while we can put, people in seats and places, sometimes if you're guiding them in the wrong direction in the first place, because at a young age, you're not really certain which direction to go. The big brand and the aura of that university pulls you in a direction. If you're not picking a course that has a good employment outcome, which is what most people go to school for, right? I think 93% of people go to school to get a good job. Then,
Mhm.
are the universities really, doing a great service to people if their ultimate goal of going there is to find a really good job once they leave?
Exactly. And right now you have a disincentive, right? Because people aren't not applying. They're still applying to universities. They're still going because that's what we've always done. That has been the pathway to success in this country, historically speaking. But it is not a sustainable pathway. Moreover, the universities have to feed themselves. So, like, they have these tenured folks that do, classics 101, and I was a classics minor, so I'll raise my hand here. But uh, making that a requirement just to make sure that tenured professor has something to teach every semester. I mean, it's just I just wonder, um, what's the big objective here? And I think that the other shift that has to happen, and this is where higher ed becomes, frankly, a great place as an incubator for talent development. Meaning, the professor isn't saying, "Okay, the knowledge is in my head," because we know it's not. It's in these devices, right? I have more here than the entire Alexandra library. Okay, just in that little phone right there. But be a curator of this experience that this person wants to have. Like, okay, young person, what's the learning pathway that you're on? Okay, okay. Well, here's some competencies along that pathway, and here's some courses that could meet the need as you look to level up in those different paths. That's a very different approach than just saying, okay, that's your major, and here's the requirements of the major. Go for it. I just that's where universities have to go if they want to stay relevant. Because frankly, the bigger that organizations like SkillStorm become, and then parents like myself that are about to write six-figure checks for the next 4 years start to ask some questions like, look, thank God I only have one kid. But had I had more, I'm like, look, are any of y'all technically inclined? Any of you? Because if you are, let's do this faster because you're going to help me subsidize your brother and sister.
No, I think it's a good point, Cordell. Funny enough, we were joking about this earlier. I'm doing a presentation on this, and when you talk about the cost of education, and Joe and I were talking about this a while back, since 1985, it's increased by 480%. It's outstripped healthcare costs, right? So when I look back on my college career, my university career, I went to university to get a job, my first job. I didn't go to university to get my fifth job. I didn't go to university for this experience and to become a critical thinker over time. I went to university to get my first job. And I feel like often that argument that you go there for the experience, it's a very expensive experience. It's an experience that costs you a mortgage, right?
Yes.
And there's this, you're losing sight of the fact that you are going to university to get your first job, to get your first opportunity, right? And to make sure you've got the ability to start your career and launch your career. And exactly what you were saying. So much of that, I think, has been lost.
Yeah, it has, and I think about this often. I'm sure you all do as well. Like, do we just blow it up and start over, or is there a way of bringing the university to the table and saying, "Listen, we are all after the same thing. We can be helpful to each other. Let's figure out what that is, like what that looks like, because um, that your path isn't sustainable. At some point, you're just going to blow up, and you're going to have a lot more people upset with you than they are now. And moreover, you're going to lose so much in brand as a result. So, like, is there a way that we can be helpful to each other on this goal of getting kids to universities? This is why I love the bachelor degree plus approach, especially for minority serving institutions. Uh, you can imagine like a Miles College in Talladega, I think it's Talladega, Alabama, something like that. Small city, liberal arts school, Baptist, church created it. Maybe 1,000 students. Most of these students are going off to be preachers. Well, how many churches can you preach? I mean, there's an upper limit. How many service jobs you can get into? But what if those kids could also get an AWS certification in addition to seminary? That's probably an administrator I would love to engage with when I'm having a really challenging time in my CRM. and I need someone to be gentle with me, but also tell me what I'm doing wrong. So, I mean, I think they need to be a little more expansive about how they think about the humans they're seeking to develop, and recognize, like, just like I have Hall Health that does counseling for them, I can't do that. I can't teach you astronomy and help you mentally. Like, look at these external partners that can be helpful to the experience that these kids are trying to have, because the outcome of getting a job benefits everybody, because we all get to take credit for it.
Cordell, how much do you think of this change? And I think often about, the role of some of these technical apprenticeships, with my kids. I got 4 kids and they're all very different. And this is something that I actively encourage in my family. Don't think you just have to go to university. You've got to be able to evaluate all options. Yeah. How much of this change do you think has to be driven by employers?
I would say it's 50-50, employers and parents. Employers can be really helpful here by explicitly welcoming it. For instance, rather than saying, I want someone with a 4-year degree. I remember I used to support Rex Tillerson when he was chair of education for Business Roundtable. And he says, I give the same speech every year. I'm hiring 8,000 engineers this year. I would love it if it be your son and daughter, but I don't care if it's not. I'm going to hire 8,000 engineers this year, right? And I want them to say the same thing to parents. Like, I need to hire, 8,000 amazing humans that can do X. I don't care how they get to learn how to do X, as long as they can do X. I think that's a game changer for families as they're making these financial decisions. And frankly, these 18-year-olds are about to make life-changing loan decisions. Do I do 150K a year to go to this Ivy, or is there a more affordable option? Frankly, is there an option that would pay me to learn as I earn? That'd be amazing, especially for first-generation kids. My goodness. Yeah, I got in trouble with the Gates Foundation for saying it. I'll just say it anyway. That was a long time ago, but for first-gen kids, the number one objective is a job, as a job, because there's nothing more liberating than to have that moving truck in your mom's driveway, the hood, and everybody knows that you're not a criminal. But little Johnny went off and did something with some education thing, and 18 months later, his mom and him are moving. That is a statement like you wouldn't believe. But what's also a statement is when little Johnny goes off to Colgate and gets a 4-year degree in English, and he's right back there with his mom 5 years later. That's also a statement. He's saddled with debt. That's why he's with his mom. But he has a degree on the wall.
Crazy.
Folks need something a little more than that. And so I was actually advocating for more CTE for first gen, and arguing kind of in a backhanded way that traditional higher ed is something that the elites can engage in, but for the next 2 generations, let's just get people jobs and they'll make their own decisions.
Yeah, no,
that was not a popular opinion, by the way.
No, I'm sure. I'm sure.
Cordell, I think it's a great segue, actually. A university degree is not for everybody. I think we've had complete inflation creep, credential inflation creep across all jobs and everything else. And I think that pendulum is starting to swing back in the right direction. People say, no, we don't need a college degree for you to be a software engineer. So with that in mind, providing multiple pathways and accessible pathways and affordable pathways for people from all backgrounds is really important. And I know that, you are known for and described as the belonging evangelist. Could you tell us a little bit about what belonging means to you?
Sure.
And why it's so important to you?
Yeah, I just had to back up and talk a little bit about history of DE&I here first. So diversity, equity, inclusion as a concept really came about during the Nixon administration. Once he kind of realized the power of the federal government as a procurer of goods and services, saying, whoa, we're representing at that point an 1/8 of GDP. Now it's more like a 5th. Some would say a 4th of GDP is the government spending on goods and services. Like, I want to know who works for these companies. Just tell some of the demographics so that I can report that out to my voters as something that I'm doing, right? So it was never a requirement. But here's the thing, as you all know, when you're competing in a competitive process for a federal grant or an RFP from a federal government, and this top score is 100, and between 199 of the people that, well, 98 are the people that win, if you think responding to a question and get you an extra point, you're going to respond. In fact, if you are super competitive, as most people are, you're going to make sure that these are metrics that you're given before they even ask. And that's how it started. The big defense contractors saying, hey, let's reporting out on the diversity of our employees. And so that became its own industry. Its own industry, D&I just takes off, right? And so the problem with that approach, I should say, over the last 45 years of D&I, is that it's not tethered to anything. And so once the national consensus on creating more opportunity for others, especially those that have been historically underserved, kind of eroded, and it comes and goes. But Reagan was that big kind of death knell of the post-civil rights consensus. And then it's been eroding ever since. Then what? You have political acrimony. You have all types of attacks on it. You have bills changing this and that. It's just drama, lots of drama. Corporately, it's become a compliance exercise. So people, they hear D&I, they're like, oh gosh, it's just like doing the annual ethics thing. I got to do this too, right? And so it has to be tethered to a bigger strategy. That bigger strategy is belonging. It's a vision. This idea that we should be working towards a society where we all belong and have opportunities to thrive. Now, D&I is a strategy to get us to thriving. It is not the strategy. We're welcoming other pathways to belonging and thriving. But the fact that it was kind of floating out there as its own thing, I think is problematic. I seek to tether it to belonging as the big idea. This is the why of it all. Belonging, right? So, okay, once we have it tethered and belonging, great, that's good. Belonging means nothing if there's no pathway to thriving. And so, in my mind, you got to work on thriving first, especially with folks that are accustomed to being lied to being dismissed, to being not being trusted, to being underestimated. You need to show them how they can thrive super fast, which goes back to my point of controversy when I was at the Gates Foundation. For first generation kids, let's get them thriving as soon as possible, meaning a JOB. Mm-hmm. Okay, if you can do that, then you can start working, you can close that trust gap, and they'll start to believe again. Like, this American dream thing is, you know what? Yeah, it's working out for me. It's working out for me. You know what? Perhaps you shouldn't say that about my country, guys. Okay, because this country's been good to me. I took advantage of opportunities, and here we are. And so right now, that's an upper middle class argument. We can talk about these things triumphantly because the system works for us. We have to make the system work for everybody, or it will stop working for us. And that's the point of it all. That's the point of belonging.
That's great. And, Cordell, obviously, when you came on the board, I believe Justin heard you giving, one of these speeches about belonging, and it just resonated so much with him and what we're trying to do here, and, accelerated opportunity and all that. So I, just like to hear from you, and maybe just share with our listeners, why did you decide to join the SkillStorm Advisory Board? How did it, tie in with the things that you're passionate about? And then if you could just take a couple minutes and talk to us about UpSkill Together and what we're doing there.
Absolutely. When I first met Justin out in Biltmore, I didn't know what to make of him, because he's like, hey, we're doing significant work and I want to talk to you about it. And we kept missing each other to like the last 30 minutes of the day. And I was like, oh my gosh, these guys are really doing it. And I came out to visit and I was like, oh, this is real. This is real. And I was most impressed by a group of very successful leaders who frankly don't have to do this. You could just keep being successful in your own lane. But clearly when you say accelerating opportunity, you meant it for everybody. And in hearing Joe's passion about being from Liverpool and being underestimated and not having the same opportunities and still fighting hard and making it happen, how you want to make those pathways available for other people, like, that's my story too. I'm a failed engineering student once I got out of music. Okay. I couldn't hang into calculus. I had to switch economics. Okay. And so I know inherently what it feels like to miss out on opportunity because of a lack of preparation. I know what it's like to be underestimated. And so I saw in SkillStorm, and I should say I see in SkillStorm, an opportunity for people from that same situation to have a leg up. Now, I'm a big advocate of higher ed. I think is great. I'm a bigger advocate of post-secondary success because that's the goal.
Right.
And what I preach to people, especially young people, asking like, "What should I do?" I'm saying, "What is it? Where are you going?" Because if you're trying to get a job that's going to be a career, a life-sustaining wage, a family-sustaining wage, the tech sector is the way to go in this country.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so there's a few ways you can do that. I would not suggest a university. Why on earth would you put yourself through that gauntlet and that expense when you know exactly what it is you want? How about going to a place that's intended to help you get there? They win when you win. No weed out courses, okay? And so it's real that the case for SkillStorm is real simple to me, probably having been weeded out. Okay. So maybe you have to feel that, experience that first before you're like, okay, I need to go to a place that actually wants me to be successful. And so as I look at especially minority serving institutions and where this country is going, our last majority white high school graduating class in this country is 2025. The year is 2024. Okay. So as a nation, as a competitive enterprise called a nation, we need all of our horses ready to run. We need them all ready to run, or we lose space. We lose our place here. And I don't want to lose place. I want that blue passport to mean something when I travel. I need it to for my own self-protection. Right. And so I think the more you can spread opportunity like this to people, the more we can convince universities that, hey, I am not here to replace you because I don't want to carry the physical like plant costs that you do. I'm merely seeking to enhance the experience that you're already giving these kids such that they will get jobs faster. You win, I win. It is a win-win solution, I think, for folks. And so the UpSkill Together piece to me is particularly special because you're providing obviously alternate pathways for folks who don't want to do university, but for those who are in university and they're like, I don't have what I need, or I'm not getting what I need. I need something else. What am I going to do for my master's degree? We have a cheaper, more effective solution for you that's going to put you in the same place as those 65,000 computer science graduates that everyone's competing for every single year. You're going to be right there, right after they're done picking which company they want to go to. They're coming to you next. Not many people can say that. And so I think that the gospel of UpSkill Together is like it's certainly good news. All right, it's certainly good news, and we just need to get on the mountaintops and spread it as often as possible. We need a few people to take a shot on us, specifically HBCUs. Still working on it, but once they do and realize that they will not be, this is only going to enhance their bottom line. Off to the races. Off to the races. And so to that point, I had a conversation, this is last month, with the Colombian ambassador to the US. And he's really, really focused on the Pacific coast of Colombia. This is where the majority of the Afro-Colombian population is. Great universities there, really high English usage, but the kids feel stuck. And I said, well, how about you leverage your relationships with HBCUs? I'll convene everyone else, and we're going to come to a solution together. I'm absolutely convinced that the next August in Cartagena, we're going to be able to get in front of 100 HBCU presidents and make the pitch that they've been wanting to hear for a long time, and that's an UpSkill Together. And we're going to get some contracts out of that bad boy.
Awesome. Cordell, I've got a question for you. Who was your mentor?
So
you were
many.
Who stands out?
I my formative years before the internet. And there used to be this big tome produced every year called a Who's Who's Guide in American Leadership. And I would go through it religiously, just a dork, And I would identify people like Colin Powell and Robert Schnolt, and while he was living, Reginald Lewis. And I would see what they did. And literally, I would write it down every year. Like, they had Aspen Institute, all these different things they were associated with. And I tell you to a person, not only have I met all those folks, with the exception of Reginald Lewis, because he died when I was in college, but I have been in the same places with them that I used to read about in the 90s because I wanted to be them. And so they didn't even know they were my mentors, but they are. They are my mentors.
I love that. That's brilliant.
Yeah.
That's a cool story.
Fantastic.
That's a good
That
story.
is
Well,
really
Cordell, really thank you for taking the time. Most especially, thank you for, investing your time with us on our advisory board. You made a huge impact. We got a lot of work to do. We've got a lot of bright minds with potential out there that I think we can help and help fuel the economy, and obviously
Lots of
keep
opportunity to
pace with
accelerate.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yes. So now, are you ready for this? It is
Yes.
time for the famous drumroll lightning round.
Okay.
Here we go.
Okay.
Cordell, you
Strap
ready?
yourself in.
First one. Favorite opera.
Evita,
Favorite city to visit.
Barcelona,
Texting or talking.
talking.
Wildest cab ride location.
New York,
Nickname your parents used to call you.
Corey,
Scale of 1 to 10, how good a driver are you?
4,
Fill in the blank. Vince Verga's sneaker collection is
alligator skins,
invisibility or super
Lit.
strength.
invisibility.
Do you own a bicycle?
Yes.
What's your favorite clothing brand?
Polo.
Have you ever tasted soap?
Yes.
How many times have you sneezed in the last 7 days?
25.
Is there such thing as objective beauty?
Joe.
I'll take that as a yes. When you fly on a plane, do you wear a neck pillow?
A what?
A neck pillow.
No.
Which animal could you do without? An iguana or an alligator?
Iguana.
Yeah, I would have gone with
No,
iguana.
they're the
That's
worst.
it. 15 seed. That was pretty good. Most people, I have to skip to the next question. You kept up, Cordell. I'm very impressed. Well done. That must be our most effective lightning round ever.
You are the top performer, no doubt. We should probably have
and for that,
probably
Cordell,
have an award for you.
I could
How about a
have gone to
T-shirt?
20
Would you like an
questions.
Opportunity Accelerators T-shirt? Joe has
Joe,
can
one
you
he'll
wash
share
that?
with you.
Yeah, Joe, can you watch that before you hand it over?
have a used one.
Sweet Jesus.
Well,
How about
Cordell,
orange jacket?
Yes.
that's coming.
Yeah,
That's good.
Well, Cordell, thank you again. And if anybody would like to get a hold of you or check out the work you're doing, where should they go?
Cordell Carter II on LinkedIn. That's the best place.
Excellent. Well, thank
Awesome.
you again. And thank you, everybody, for listening and or watching Opportunity Accelerators. We'll catch you next time.
This episode of Opportunity Accelerators has been brought to you by SkillStorm, where our purpose as an organization is to launch and accelerate tech careers. Please be sure to like and subscribe to catch the next episode.